So Tamika and Latasha Scott's father, Pastor Randolph Scott, did an interview today, and somehow I'm calling Cap. Is y'all ready to Jost? Cue the music.
Come on, Blazer.
It's the beat for me.
Wah 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 for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Drop it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Do it for your guy, for your B-O-Y. Come on, baby, we are.
Hey y'all, I wanted to come up here and talk about this interview that Tamika and Tasha's father did today. I believe it's called the Juice Network or the Juice Podcast. I'm not really sure, but that's where he went. He did an interview. Shout out to them for getting this exclusive. Nobody had ever heard his side, and that was basically what we were here for. We were here to hear the pastor or Tamika's father side of the story, because all we got is Mama G's side, we've got Latasha's side, we've got Tamika's side, but we had not heard from him. So he goes on this show or on this platform. He does an interview. I want to say I'm only familiar with Mims, and I'm familiar with him from Gabor's channel. Y'all, please go subscribe to Gabor. Gabor is hilarious. And I'm also familiar with Diva, the gray hair diva. She is often on Sherelle's World. So I'm familiar with her as well. But needless to say, the other people I were not familiar with, but it was good to see new faces, new Black people doing their thing in the space. So he comes on talking about how he wanted to get to be able to tell his side of the story. I guess he didn't like how Mama G was painting him in these streets. I don't really blame you. But and I guess his wife reached out to somebody, and that's how he got on this podcast. But he comes on this podcast to basically clear his name. That's what it sounds like to me. But he's up there talking about how he was very influential in their kids' lives. He never treated anybody separately. He touched on how Tasha was more under her mother and a mama's girl, and how Tamika was more of a daddy's girl, but nevertheless, he never loved them, any differently. And I believe that. I don't believe he loved or favored one daughter over the other, but I do believe that Tamika sought asylum, through her father because she could not get that in her mother. That's me with my own psychoanalyst, or analyzing the thing. That's just, what I think. But getting into the interview, so he starts off by saying that he had been in the children's life. He's never not been in the kid's life. Him and his wife basically divorced, which is Tamika and Tasha's mother, and they divorced, and he felt like it affected the kids. And he even went on to talk about how when his mother and father split, she told him, "I'm gonna leave you with your nutting ass daddy," or whatever he said, and he said how he resented her for that. And that was very, very important to me, because he goes on to say that he didn't want anything like that for his kids, yet he created a family and walked away. I don't know what the dynamics were. Mama G seemed like she had a lot to handle. Maybe that could have been the case. I'm not sure, but I just never understood why people repeat behavior that they are traumatized by. But nevertheless, he goes on to talk about how he left her, but he didn't leave the kids. He basically was very influential in their lives. He was there. That people asked if he paid child support. He said he paid child support. He even said that his financial advisor had documents, or basically said she was there. I'm sorry, she didn't have documents. She said she was there and could basically, corroborate that he paid child support. And I'm thinking, well, if you paid child support, there should be some sort of documentation. Again, no receipts. This is all, hearsay. But they were asking some questions, but I felt like they were trying to tread light because he was a pastor. And I believe that conscious or unconscious bias was shown in this interview. I didn't like that because I think we all had such a bad taste in our mouths from Mama G, to where when they got to this interview, it was all they needed was a confirmation bias. Like, oh, well, I already knew she was this, and this because of what I saw on TV. So because of that, I'm just going to go with everything that this man is saying. And I'm not saying he didn't say 100%, truth. I'm not saying he lied on anything because I don't know. I wasn't there. But I will say some of the things caused a little bit of concern for me. So one of the biggest things that was a big concern was that he said Tasha blocked him. Now, going off behavior, what we do know is Tasha blocks everybody. Hell, right now, only Tiny has her number. The other girls don't even have her number. But he said he doesn't get to talk to her, and he hadn't talked to her because she blocked him. They asked him, prior to all of this happening, did he know about all of this? And he said no, he didn't know about the $30,000. He didn't know about any of the things that's going on the actual reality show. And it baffled me because he kept going on to talk about how close he was to Tomika, how much of a daddy's girl she was, how, he was always in their lives, but he could not recall any of these instances that happened. So I just didn't understand how on one breath he'll say, oh, well, Tasha went to her mother for everything and Tomika came to me for everything. But yet when her $30,000 was stolen, she didn't come to you. Now, I'm not saying it's, something that can't happen, but I just find it odd that she wouldn't talk to her confidant if she's really that close to her daddy. I know I would if I was really that close to my father, or in this type of situation and I'm close to my father. But whenever they would ask him, well, can you give us some kind of details on like how you were with the kids growing up? Or because he kept at this whole thing of, I've always been in the girls' lives. I've never not been in their lives. Because, Mama G's whole thing is he was never there. You know what I'm saying? She did it by herself. She was a mother and a father, celebrated Mother's Day and Father's Day. But whenever the people would ask him, hey, so can you give us some details on like how it was with you and the kids and, growing up and blah, 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 blah. It would always be something vague, very vague. Like, oh, well, the girls and I was always in my kids' lives. He never really touched on anything specific. The only thing specifically he touched on was that when they asked him if he had any earlier memories of being with the girls in regards to their, success as a group, because Mama G obviously takes all the credit for that. They asked him, hey, can you give us some kind of like, example of how you contributed to the girls? And he brought up the example of how when they were, babies or before they became Escape, the group that we know, he used to bring them around all these events where there were a lot of celebrities. And he said that my kids met all these celebrities, Keith Sweat, all these people. They would laugh at their names saying, escape from what, blah, 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 blah. He's got photos of them with all these celebrities. And basically he's trying to say that Mama G wants to say she's the fifth member of the group or she's the one who did everything, but he did just as much, if not more. I find that hard to believe, Pastor, because if you really were that, influential in their careers, you would have more than just that one memory. Now, again, I could be overthinking this and overanalyzing this thing. I don't know, but something in the milk ain't clean here. I don't think that Mama G is 100% right, but I don't think he's 100% right either. One of the other things that stuck out to me was he talked about how he was so close to his kids, and yet when they asked him, do the kids know each other? Or are they close to each other? None of the kids are close to each other. It was weird. He started off by saying, my youngest two don't know any of the other kids. And keep in mind, his youngest two are 6 and 11. Pastor is 70 years old, and he got a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. I think he said he got a daughter that's married to a man in the Air Force. And then he's got, obviously, Tomika and Tasha, and he's got a son. I guess what I'm struggling with is if you were close to your daughters and even your other kids, how is it that they don't know each other? Meeting them is one thing because with distance, I get that. But how do they not know each other? I think he said Tomika met his two younger ones, but for the most part, they don't really know each other like that. And that speaks volumes to me. To me, that tells me that Pastor wasn't the father that he's portraying to be. Because if he was, he would be more like, there would be more of a presence there between the kids, if it makes sense. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I grew up, my mother had 2 children previous to marriage with my father. But my 2 older siblings always knew and been around their family. But the thing was, not only were they going around their family, my mom's other 2 kids, my brother and myself, we would go with them. So whenever they visit their dad or their grandmother, we would go and we would call them dad and grandmother. It was all a cohesive thing, right? And in that, we grew up with uncles, cousins, and all these things. We were cohesive because there was a common denominator, right? Which was either my grandmother or my brothers and sisters' grandmother or their father. So because there was a common interest there, the kids had things in common, which means the kids hung out. So like my brother's uncle was only a couple years older than him. So he basically grew up with us because I'm only a year younger than my brother, but he grew up with us. So we have memories as children together because the common interest was either his dad or his grandmother. I don't understand how, if this is the case with Pastor Randolph, then why is it that your kids are familiar with each other? If you were such a presence and a force in your children's life, why is it that there's so much separation? I get it with baby mamas and the drama and all that stuff. I get that's a factor, but for the life of me, don't understand how they not like real, not even real close, but at least have some type of memories with each other. Um, I that kind of didn't sit right with me. I'm sorry, and it goes back to his maybe subconscious feelings about his own mother. I don't know, but I just it seemed like a let's blame Gloria campaign because just like Tasha, and she must have got that from her dad. It reflects or deflects. I'm sorry, and puts it all on somebody else. His whole thing was Miss Gloria. I'm not talking nothing bad about her. I don't want to say anything bad about her, but she manipulating Tasha. She's all up under Tasha's skin. Tasha don't listen to nobody but her mother. They even asked if he would sit down and have a conversation with them, and he said he would like to, but he don't think it would happen. Well, Pastor, like one of the commentators said, you gotta break down. Well, somebody's gonna have to break down and form some humility and find some humility to have this conversation. I find it odd that as a pastor, he would be so close to the idea, or he would be so I guess negative thinking about the idea of sitting down with Miss Gloria. Um on one hand, he preaches, "Oh, I'm a pastor and a man of the cloth and a man of God and this and this." But then on the other hand, like it's I don't know. It's just I'm just not seeing the actions or his memories lining up with what he's saying. Um, I don't know, guys. Y'all got to go check out this interview with this Juice Network or Juice podcast. It's kind of it's weird to me. I think that, in my opinion, to sum it up, Tamika is cool with her father. I believe she's closer to her father, but I believe it's only by default because she's not as close to the love and support that she wants from her mother. That's literally what I believe. Anytime they ask him when was his last memories with the girls, with Tasha and Tamika, and his response could be, "Oh, well, we've been together. They followed me to go to a funeral. I was out one day eating lunch and they paid for my dinner. Tamika would call and check on me." None of this was substantial, like, memories for someone to say, "Hey, yeah, this is how I was active in my children's lives." It seems like they were really a part of their dad's life in passing. I believe that Tamika went out of her way to have a relationship with her father. I believe Tamika was actually really close to her father, but I believe it was on her own merit and not his. Because for the life of me, if you were such an active father, Pastor, I don't understand why your children aren't closer and why your memories are so vague. That's just my opinion. Now, again, I could be overanalyzing and overthinking this whole thing, but I mean, I'm a child who grew up with my father, who grew up with multiple fathers at that. And I typically know, even with your grandmothers, think back to your grandmothers. When you got a grandmother who got a whole bunch of grandkids, that common interest, which is your grandmother, will make you and your siblings, or you and your siblings and your cousins, have real detailed memories of things that you guys have done together, times that y'all have spent together, things that you guys have, gone through together, because there's a common interest there. You don't have to live in the house with your cousins to have memories, I'm sorry, with them, and to have, actual encounters with them. But yet this common interest, Pastor Randolph, he claims he was so active, but none of his kids have common interests. Again, I could be tripping, but y'all drop down in the comments and let me know what y'all think. Let me know if I'm overdoing it on the pastor. Again, I don't do titles, so I don't really care that he's a pastor. He can get the work too, and I'm not being disrespectful. I just have genuine questions. But drop down in the comments and let me know. Let me know what y'all think, and what's y'all's opinion. Do y'all believe Pastor Randolph has really been in his children's lives as much as he claims? Or do you believe he was there, but just not as much as he maybe have remembered? Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Mr. Carroll. How you give the voodoo doll time to talk? I don't get no fucking time to talk.
Who the voodoo doll is?
The nigga you just had up here.